I'm able to actually sit with you in this conversation, in this sort of podcast. I'm probably switching from academic English to more sort of colloquial English, but I'm completely comfortable with that because that's who I am. And I don't have to choose between one or the other.
Definitely.
And I think that, I don't know about you, Sulaiman, but I just feel like sometimes it's like I'm able to like connect with you on a deeper level, knowing that we have a lot more in common. Do you know what I mean? And not being afraid about it.
So, Sulaiman, how's your week?
Saadadeen. Yesterday I performed spoken word for the first time in public.
Okay.
And it was actually Saadadeen's event. So he organized a poetry event, which I performed because he forced me to perform. And it was very good. I'm very thankful that he gave me that opportunity.
Yeah.
But yeah, Saadadeen, how was your week, man?
Bro, my week is being the audience of your performance, man. Yeah, the way like Sulaiman just captivated the audience, it was crazy. And I remember it's mad because like even so Sulaiman is someone I talk to all the time and things like that. But like when he performed it, I was like, wow, I never seen. There's so many things that you realize that even with, like I was saying to you earlier, like even with people that you consider close and things like that, there's so many things that you don't know about people. And being able to like,
he kept that quiet.
Yeah, man. So it was. I felt like very blessed to be able to hear that, and go and see that journey that he took when he was writing it.
Can you give us a little medley now?
Shall I give you buzz? Go on.
Let me see what I can remember. I'll try to do the first paragraph if I can. You ready, yeah? Close your eyes. Now, seriously, close your eyes. In order for you to see what I see, I'm going to need for you to be blind. That's the first 3 lines. I'll give you that only.
That's deep. That's deep. I was actually going to think of. I was thinking of closing my eyes.
Yeah,
Is that an instruction? Is that
that's the thing. People in the audience actually closed their eyes, which was quite. I was quite happy about that.
Because when you said no, seriously, close your eyes, I was like, he's like talking to me now. He's like made it very personal. But yeah, we got a very special individual in the room today. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Omar Salha. I'm an academic. I'm a lecturer. I'm also the founder and CEO of Ramadan 10 Project. But in this room, I'm just another West Londoner who...
That's it.
Yeah, just looking forward to having this little catch up.
Come on, free West
I'm loving
Londoners.
the setup, by the way. You know, this reminds me of the Social Network.
Okay.
You know, the beginnings of Facebook. This is the beginnings of like a FTSE 100 company.
Very kind of you to say, man. So Omar, how's your week, man?
Alhamdulillah, very good. Alhamdulillah, alive, blessed, family, all good.
Let's start at the beginning. Who is Omar Salha? How did you get to the stage that you're at now? What are some early memories that come to mind?
We're gonna go back a couple of 100 years. There's a picture my mum took of me, which was in East London, and I don't know why, I just remember that behind those really old red buses, like the old school, like those checkered orange brown seats. Buses, which are now probably like made into dresses or shirts now because they're so like vintage. You know? I remember people used to sit on them. There used to be loads of dust. Don't know if you've ever tried to like, actually step in the seat like that. Anyways, but yeah, I remember that picture my mum took of me, and I remember that was in East London, Mile End. And then parents, obviously new to the country, they emigrated from Lebanon because of the Civil War. So I was born in Beirut during the Civil War. So actually, officially, you could say I'm a war child in the sense that, you know, during that very, very tough time, my parents found a way, and subhanAllah, just found themselves in London.
Did your parents talk to you much about their experience of the Civil War growing up?
Growing up, yeah. I mean, not there and then, but obviously as I think at university I did the Middle East politics.
Okay.
So obviously there was a lot of talk on Lebanon, and I think naturally when you come back home and you're talking about Lebanon, your father's like, okay, now I need to maybe sit you down and what they're teaching you at university, maybe tell you the real, some of the undocumented events that took place. But that was a really interesting experience. I mean, it was awful. It was about 15 years. It was several factions involved. Lebanon really hasn't come back from those events. We still see the same thing being played out again and again politically. So even now, as we speak, there are sitting protests. There's no government in place really. It's quite a dire situation, to be honest. So subhanallah, if I had stayed, my parents decided to stay in Lebanon, it would be a completely different story. I don't know what I would be doing right now, what my parents would be doing. So subhanallah, for them to make that decision, and Allah facilitated for them, and especially they had no one here, so it was a really tough decision. So but yeah, I mean, I grew up in London. We moved around, so East London, North London, so around Seven Sisters, Finsbury Park, and we had a good, strong family unit. I always look back in, I suppose, in deep reflection, which puts a smile on my face when I think about my secondary years, especially.
Okay. Tell us because you went to Henry Compton, right? The notorious Henry Compton. Tell us about what that was like, because I know people that went to, and it was very formative for them. So how was it like for you?
Henry Compton. Well, so the uniform was black trousers, black blazer, white shirt, and a navy blue tie. And our sort of emblem on the uniform was a crown and two swords. And it was all boys school. And the second word is Henry Compton school. So it looked like we're going to funeral every day, like start to war. Like, you know, when you're just dressed in a way that every day you're just... But you know what, subhanAllah, like so many memories. I think that's what made me a man my early teenage years. I think I look back and I think moments of where you're going to a very macho, school in Fulham. It was, one of the worst secondary schools in the country. I think, national average of GCSE pass rate was 55%. Still there or thereabouts, around the same. I think we were hitting 17%. That was like the best ever, in our year. Before maybe 15%. So it just became I think there's a time for the school to sort of close down, and now it's called something else. But I look back and I think those 5 years spent in Henry Compton were, I did not prepare for that.
Almost painting a dystopia.
I can't, it's one of them was where I gotta be,
The Hunger Games.
I feel like I look back though, I think, you know what, I really do miss those days. You know what, I think a lot of schools, I reckon, used to envy our school. Not because of the grades, but I think because of the sense of, like, it was the most talked about school in the area. I remember there was Sheen, not too far, ADT, Emmanuel College. These are all, in affluent areas of London, parts of London, like Putney, Wandsworth, Fulham as well. I mean, like, for us, it was really weird because we would come out of school and then you're suddenly surrounded by these semi-detached houses, very few council block estates that you could see. You walk a couple of miles, you're in the trenches. You're in like Kamatli Estate. I mean, Kamatli Estate doesn't need no introduction. West Kent, not too far off Northern Road as well. So, and I think the joy that I had from going to a school like Henry Compton, I'm not gonna lie. The first time I went to the school, we sat down with the head teacher. My parents, the ones where you're the age of 7. And your parents are like teaching you how to like maybe, do certain homeworks at the age of 7 and oh yeah, you know what, this is how you spell certain words, etc. And then like I think 7 years later, when you're 14, you're suddenly now dealing with like applications for your parents. Like
it's like tables have turned.
And you're straight in, chuck it to the deep end. You're suddenly now they're asking you for counsel advice. Like at the age of 14, you're like, what? When did I come to your legal counsel? But subhanAllah, that again, I mean, part of being the eldest sibling in my family also propelled me into like, taking on a lot more responsibilities, looking out for my younger siblings, being the first to experience the system that we are in, the education system. But I just think like for me, that experience of being notoriously known for the wrong reasons actually made me appreciate that if I can survive this, if I can come out of this, then against all odds, then there's so much for us that is waiting for us to accomplish.
That's a very optimistic mind state to have. And what I want to know is like what was your mindset in terms of that responsibility being thrusted upon you? Like, you didn't ask to be the older sibling, you didn't necessarily ask to go Henry Compton and be in that. What was your mindset? Because it could have been very easy to be quite negative or like not want to rise to the challenge, so to speak, of having that responsibility. So what made you so optimistic, and how did you feel like being in the position you were in?
I just thought, you know what, sometimes you've got to make your own odds. You know, you gotta make your own chances. You gotta make your own opportunities. If you're gonna wait around, no one's gonna give you chances or opportunities. And I think I saw it as a challenge. So I think like I like being the underdog, and I like being in a position where I can prove people wrong. I like being in a position where, do you know what? There's a school down the road where you pay £3,000-4,000 a term, but I reckon I can still probably do better than them in this subject. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
And I feel that is the sense of bravado that we had with us as a school.
That's so
So
true.
look, here's the funny thing, yeah. Inside Henry Compton, it's every man for himself. But when you're outside of the school and you're and you see someone else from Henry Compton, there was this incredible bondage. Like you're my brother, you know. Like I'm gonna look out for you. You're gonna look out for me. And I feel like that was the sense when we sort of met up after everyone's sort of moved on from Henry Compton and we started to catch up, etc. That feeling still was there.
Yeah.
Like I'm proud, like almost like your father saying to you, "I'm proud of you."
Yeah.
For getting these grades and now going on to university, etc.
Yeah.
And that was an incredible feeling where that sense of family, in some way, came out of that. And to be honest with you, look, I've got 4 or 5 of my friends who I'm still in touch with on a regular basis, who went to Henry Compton with me, and they might, they've seen me grow, like my parents have, in a weird way. They've seen me in my, young years, coming through these phases and coming up to where I am today.
That's so interesting. It's sort of that camaraderie that comes from a shared oppression, almost like that. You went through the same tumultuous times, and you both acknowledge that, or you all acknowledge that, and that's what kind of makes you close. Something I want to ask you, Sulaiman, Omar spoke about like being the oldest in his family and the responsibility that kind of put on him. You're also the oldest sibling in your family. Like, what kind of how do you feel like that's kind of shaped?
I think it's a lot to do with not having a blueprint in front of you, and like you have a lot of agency mixed with a lot of pressure. You know what I mean? So you are automatically the role model for your younger sibling. So you need to bear that in mind with every step that you make. I don't think you become conscious of this until you reach a certain age. You know what I mean? Because there's a level of maturity you need to have before you start thinking about others. But it's an interesting one because you can do anything and it's the first time you've done it. You know what I mean? And it's good to some extent because you're not living up to expectations. So sometimes I kind of I feel like my younger brother has to deal with a lot of pressure or has to deal with a lot of difficulties because he's got an older brother that has done certain things. So there might be certain expectations that are linked to him. So I'm quite grateful for the opportunity of being the older brother to some extent.
I like the fact that you say there's no blueprint, because I do think the path you set yourself out, you can go back and think maybe I could do things differently. But the consequences or the repercussions, like you just don't know. And I feel like there was a moment where I think I was in year 10. We're starting to take life a bit more seriously now. Like the first 3 years is like not really, but now you're looking at GCSEs. And I had a conversation with my science teacher who said to me, "Have you heard of the International Baccalaureate?" And I was like, "No." All I knew back then was A levels. So, you should give this a thought. You do 7 subjects instead of 4. It's a bit more, you get to do a lot of different subjects, cross-disciplinary. So I thought, sure, let me have a look at this. And the only place that did it for free in the country back then was Richmond upon Thames College in Twickenham. Now, there were a few of us from Compton who ended up going to Richmond College. And a lot more probably went to William Morris, which is down the road from Compton. But I was like, you know what? I've done 5 years of Compton. I can't do another 2 years of Compton at sixth form level. So I want to get out of the area. But the incredible thing is, I look back and think, wow, there were 2 people, from our year group, me and my boy, who we both wanted to do medicine. Alhamdulillah, we both got AA stars in our science. Wow. And we looked at each other and we thought, let's just give this IB a shot. Like, we don't know. And we applied and we both got in. And then it was stark because we went from all boys, Compton, to now Richmond, Twickenham. Needless to say, if you're in Twickenham, like, for us, it was like outside of London back then.
Yeah.
And so traveling there on like the train to Reading, I remember it's a train to Reading where you go, if I'm not mistaken, one of the stops is Feltham.
Yeah.
So, and you're on your way to Twickenham. So we get off Twickenham and you make a long walk to the college, and you're right next to the Twickenham Stadium, and you're like these plush, massive green fields, and you're like, this is completely different to where we live in London. And so we did IB, but it was mixed. You had international students with you. You had European students who spoke maybe 3-4 languages, had come back from a background that was very, very different. So I'm not going to lie, I think the first year of doing the IB was quite difficult because you're trying to, your sense of belonging was not, you weren't really comfortable. Whereas me going to Compton, as much as it was, not academically, up there, you still felt comfortable in the surroundings because of the people who were there. But this required a bit of adjustment to fit in. And we still stay true to ourselves, whilst being mindful that, you're in a space where academically, now the pressure is on. So it's always, again, it was a different type of challenge because now you're in the room with the people that you wanted to match or beat.
Yeah.
So you're in the same room with them now. And so, alhamdulillah, we managed to get through. I had a change of heart. I was going to do medicine. Actually applied for medicine. And I think back then at UCAS, you had 6 options. If you did medicine, it would take up 5 of the 6 options for UCAS. And then the last option was like a backup. And I said, actually, I want to do economics and politics. So
that's an interesting backup.
yeah, because that's when I had that change of heart thinking, well, I love medicine, but for me, I was always interested in these different cross-societal issues, education, social housing, social class, the system that we live in, liberal democracies, neoliberalism, justice, and what does that look like? And so, but I mean, the reason why I mentioned this is you look back and I think there were moments which, again, it's difficult, like you say, there's no blueprint, but there were certain things that happened for a reason. And for me, it was about looking at others who are going through a similar journey right now, where I'm able to actually look into them and understand what they're going through, and not in a condescending manner or in a pedantic way or anything like that, but actually to be in a way to say, look, if I did this, you are more than capable, right? Because now I want to support the younger generation who maybe didn't have someone they could maybe speak to, right? Not look up to, speak to, because everyone's on a different, unique journey. And so for me, it's about having that conversation to look at, and even including yourselves, both of you sitting in front of me. Like, it's really inspiring to see people who've come up from a similar, background and be in an institution like like you guys are at today, and see, wow, continue to break these walls down, continue to break these ceilings down, to continue to, prove people wrong, but it's not your job to prove people wrong. That's also important. We can fall into a trap where we can it's our duty to prove people wrong, because you still fall into the master-slave relationship where your only definition of your existence, or the need for you to exist, is to prove your master wrong. That is not freedom. Freedom is breaking that chain between the master and the slave to say, actually, I exist and I belong. Not in definition or by definition because of my relationship to you. I'm not here to prove you wrong, right? I'm here to live my freedom in completeness, in complete, full understanding of what your belonging means. So your identity, and I think it's interesting. I was speaking to someone earlier about first generation immigrants who come to the country who didn't really have an identity issue. They were more confident in their identity, and actually were therefore, in terms of practical terms of wanting to make something out of their life, a lot more forthcoming, a lot more entrepreneurial. Whereas the younger generation now have this identity crisis or issue because they were brought up, told that your home is back home, right? And we know what our parents are trying to say here. They say your roots, do not forget your roots, which is fine. We all have shared histories, we all have shared identities, it's important. But also when you go to school, so your parents are saying one thing, but then more importantly, the state is saying another, and your people that you live in the same neighborhood are saying different things to you, whereas there's the racism or the Islamophobia, etc. Then you have this question about, where do I belong? right? And that really impacts your growth, your confidence. And so for me, when I look at young, confident men and women, future leaders of our community, brothers and sisters, who are able to power through in full confidence of their identity, everything else is achievable. And I think that actually is what got me through Henry Compton and Richmond and get me to university. And so I was just firm and confident in who I am.
On the topic of identity and sort of finding your place in the world or acknowledging the place that you already have in the world, Sulaiman and I often talk about an aspect of identity, which is speech, right? And going to Henry Compton and having the upbringing you have, I'm sure this is something you'll be familiar with. And it's something that for me, I had wrestled with a lot. The way you speak changing, is that a foregoing of yourself, or is that self-development? Language is power.
Language is power. I mean, one of the greatest, I think, underrated academic thinkers of our time, Ngugi wa Thiong'o from Kenya, wrote a book called Decolonization of the Mind. He actually went through a similar struggle in the sense that he spoke his local dialect, and he was adamant that he was going to write his literature and his books in his local language, which would then be translated into other languages. I mean, he could speak English, but he decided actually no, I wanted to speak in my local language. So for him, it's about, and I mean, there's a lot of literature written about power, the intersection of power, language, and knowledge, and written by Foucault, written by Bourdieu. You look at Erik Erikson's essay on identities, the fact that we're ever evolving. So I would certainly say that when you learn a new language and learn how to play a new instrument, it hasn't changed your identity. It's almost evolved you as an individual. So growth. And Allah subhanahu, I mean, the Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam made it wajib to seek knowledge, right? So it's quite interesting that to seek knowledge, even if it was in China, is actually an instruction that your identity is not stationary. Your identity is evolving. Because then we connect this hadith to the ayah in Surah Al-Hujurat, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, we created you into different nations and tribes so that you may recognize one another. So actually from these two things, and actually if we're connecting at to sort of like the Western academia of like knowledge, language, power, evolving identities, what the Rasul has made it wajib on us to go and actually seek education, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying that we created the different nations types, we may recognize one another, understand, appreciate, have differing opinions, but it's important to understand and know. 100%, it's all about evolving identities. I mean, I genuinely feel it's almost like when you have different currencies, right? So obviously there's a general currency that we exchange and work with, but then there's almost like the secret currency that you're able to tap into certain communities or engage with who have that trust. And I completely agree. That's why for me, I'm able to actually sit with you in this conversation, in this sort of podcast. I'm probably switching from academic English to more sort of colloquial English, but I'm completely comfortable with that because that's who I am. And I don't have to choose between one or the other.
Definitely.
And I think that, I don't know about you, Sulaiman, but I just feel like sometimes it's like I'm able to like connect with you on a deeper level, knowing that we have a lot more in common. Do you know what I mean? And not being afraid about it.
Like I've told this to Saadadeen before, but it always comes down to what's the purpose of speech and like why do we speak in the first place? And for me, we speak to be received, and the way in which we speak needs to be kind of thought about. You know what I mean? You should be thoughtful before you speak, so that your speech and your message essentially is received. And being versatile, evolving by learning languages completely changes the way that you're able to kind of impact others.
So Omar, moving forward a bit more, so you're now doing your PhD as well as lecturing. So talk us a little bit about what those steps were to get to where you are now doing that.
Well, to be honest with you, like I was thinking about academia and lecturing. So I did my undergrad at Goldsmiths and my master's at SOAS. I took a couple of years out to work and came back and revisited as an opportunity to apply for a scholarship. So the only way for me to do a PhD, to sustain myself while doing a PhD, was to get a scholarship. Otherwise, it would be very difficult managing a few jobs and also doing the PhD, unless, of course, I went part-time. So alhamdulillah, I applied for a scholarship, looked at integration of Muslims in Britain at SOAS, got the scholarship. And my thesis focuses on a couple of passions that I have. One is football and sport, and also diplomacy is the other passion I have. And I think from the earlier conversation around Henry Compton and identities, I have a passion in exploring the world. I have a passion in bringing different people together, understanding more about each other, whilst also sharing something which is very, dear to me, which is my faith. And that's something which is prevalent in all of my work, and maybe my journey as a young kid who turned into a teenager and a young adult, and now someone who is still growing, still learning, and my faith is my main driver. How I react, how do I react to the world? I meet the world where it is, and I just take it from there. Hence the optimism, hence the sort of progressive thinking, and a lot of that comes from my faith. To force me to grow. Right. So you look at, for example, for me in our recent history, I look at Muhammad Ali, the boxer, and for me, he's my ultimate role model when it comes to like someone who's lived in the modern era and how he's managed to convey political issues, social issues, and religious, all three, which again is what my interests are in. I look at someone like him where politically he was courageous to stand and say he would not go to fight in Vietnam. I look at socially where he was standing up for the civic rights movement in the US and not being afraid of pushback or sponsorship deals being cut off. And his faith, again, proudly affirming his faith to Islam and speaking about it, in such a very eloquent, articulate manner. And I remember one of the many interviews he did with Paxman where he said something like a lot of black families around the US and around the world are watching this and jumping up and down in celebration that they see a black man, nice, suited, booted, with eloquence, speaking about things which many of them were not able to be afforded that platform to speak about. And I feel for someone, I look at him and I think, wow, that's someone who truly, in such elegance, addressed every point of view with such ease, but poetically as well. It was incredible.
What do you want to be doing more of in the future? What does the future hold for Omar?
I mean, look, for me, it's about empowering our community as a whole. My passion is about that. My passion is about looking at how we can get many of us to start thinking about ourselves as a collective, not as individuals. Inshallah, if I could be a facilitator in that, then alhamdulillah. I love, having these conversations with you guys. I love the fact that it's in this room and you're like, you get just mad inspiration. You just sitting in this room and then thinking, wow. And I love lecturing. I love being able to be that educator and facilitator. And I want to push people to start questioning things that are given to them, and to look at things through a critical lens. I do believe in collective social justice. I do believe that, as much as it's important that we should work and strive ourselves to try and make out what we can, it's about empowering the community as a whole. Because if you don't do that, you've now fit into the neoliberal trap, which is about me, and not thinking about your neighbor, not thinking about those around you. So for me, I think from an academic perspective, I'd love to continue writing, publishing, inshallah. I want to keep on doing that because I think that's my passion. It's just the time for it. That you need to set yourself out to do that, because it's a lot of things that I would love to write about, and I want people to read, and inshallah they could be inspired from that. And also I think, in terms of real projects, I like to look at myself as a pracademic. So there's a practical and academic arm to that, right? So I love to I'm embedded in the community, but I'm also, in the academic world. So don't get it twisted, in other words, I have to drop that in at the end.
Before Saadadeen wraps it up, I just remembered something.
Yeah.
One of the final lines in my poem yesterday was inspired by you, actually. It was inspired by something you said in the Islamic Society event that we organized last term. And the line was, "We are all here for a reason. Faith, purpose, action. That is the mantra for this season."
Oh, I
you
like
know-
that. Can I
Take that. Take it with you.
No, I'm going to credit you. Don't worry. I'm going to credit you, but I need this. Write this for me. I love that.
Nah, because faith, purpose, action was the title of his presentation.
Yeah.
And yeah, man, that's basically the themes you brought up today as well, man. But yeah.
Wicked, man.
Got to do this again, though.